Sounds good.
Okay, 10 o'clock, so we'll start, but we are missing our first speaker for the first couple of items here, so we'll skip down to transfer station planning. It's on here really, the placeholder.
The only
Else we need to.
Terry, the only I want to bring up to, and Doug, if you're listening, I know we have budgeted next year for a compactor. And I have a quote now, but it's going up again 10% more in December. It may go up again 10% more in October or January. So, there'd be from what the quote is now of 27.5, it might be up to 31,000 in 60 days. So I don't know, my discussion is, should we order it now and get it ordered to save ourselves some money, and then just because it's not going to be here right away.
Yeah.
I mean,
What is delivery on it?
maybe May.
May,
Yeah,
going to be in next year. So.
right. So it means to be next year, but anyone have I think Caitlin, you put together a resolution for it, or we have to. No, all right, we'll do that. I'll do that this way.
Yeah.
Is that for recycling or for trash?
That's for recycling. So that's a second recycling bin. And it's got, for lack of a better term, they call it a rake for the large cardboard that tends to get difficult. I wish I could explain it better, but I really can't. It's the best I could tell you. It looks like a rake that when the plunger goes back and forth, it somehow collects it with the teeth and pulls it in, so it doesn't just sit up top.
So is this a replacement or
Yeah,
a second?
A second. A second. So,
Yeah, I would think put together a resolution, bring it up to the town board meeting a week from Monday.
right,
It's in the budget, right?
it's in the budget for next year.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to save us some money.
But
Oh,
the
yeah, no.
cost has already increased over what we budgeted once, right?
Right.
And it may
Over
go,
what we
Well,
budgeted for next
our
year.
budget, we have enough in the budget for next year. I've got to worry about that.
Oh.
We're good. Just each month we wait, it seems to be going up.
Yeah.
This is like purchasing a truck, right? For the most part,
Right.
where you want to buy it now, or at least get it ordered now, and
We
you
did
pay
that.
for it after the first of the year.
Yeah,
Right.
We did that last fall.
Correct. So I'll write a resolution real quick. It's not hard. It's through Sourcewell. It's already been big for us, so give that luck for it. So yeah, that's what I got for that right now.
How's things going, transfer station? Any issues really?
The usual stuff.
Yeah, usually.
The usual stuff. I know.
I mean, nothing, no big issues. Right?
No, other than just out of town residents who use our facility. The usual traffic and typical stuff. So I'm hoping that now that the election's over and all the supervisors are safe for the next 4 years, that the county now will put a little more effort in what they're going to do as far as solid waste goes.
Yeah. Well, I think we got, some conceptual ideas over there, but there's no real driver right now to say we ought to invest in it.
Right. I agree. And
Disposal backwards. You know where you're gonna take the stuff, then you work back to how you're gonna collect it.
well, that might be the issue right
That's
there,
it.
Chuck.
That's
Is where's it gonna go?
They've got to determine what's gonna happen with it in the future.
I should stay in touch with
Carla?
Carla. Do what she hears, I mean, she's closer to them than we are, so she may hear something positive from them, and they will give us a heads up that it's coming, so it'd be nice to know. So.
I think it's good to keep it on our radar like this, but
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we knew something's gonna happen back there, so just a matter. What
Literally.
and when.
Right.
All right, let's move along to sanitary sewer discussion. Anything to report?
Yeah, I actually got something back from
Oh,
Tim.
okay.
Whoa.
So apparently I probably had some dated information. So there's a couple parcels with the existing district, the sewer district that, overlapped where are proposed. So I gotta make some revisions to that. There's probably some other parcels that need to get added in because I think I thought it went further north than it actually did, so. Basically, I gotta rework the boundary just a little bit. We're talking about the flex of maybe like 6 or 8 properties, in total. But they are gonna require flow study, location to be determined. And then,
Location, not to be determined.
flow study.
Oh,
So
okay,
we're
I
gonna
see. what
add
you're
just
saying.
that'll be, our expense to do the flow study. And then they did give you some information on what is expected for the flow study, so that's good. They sent back, it said that we can model the pump station after Outhouse Park. But I'm gonna go back and talk to, because I really believe the generator should be able to be outside.
Yeah,
There's no reason to build a building for a generator.
that was very expensive.
Yeah. I don't mind going to Kistner and getting, precast hut to put, the house, the valves and stuff like that, that's. But you're talking about like an 8x8 hut versus,
Right.
I think that thing's like 20 by something.
It is, it's a large concrete building.
And it's got some pretty significant ventilation associated with it because there's a diesel.
No, natural gas.
So that one's natural gas, okay. By the time you put a generator inside. It's kind of expensive.
Do we have a location, the lift station? Where it would be located? I mean,
No,
you don't have the. parcel
I
land.
mean, we have some sort of an idea
Concept.
where it was kind of conceptually laid out, but I would probably look to survey it and then try to figure out.
Would
where's the
require
most valuable.
acquisition, actual.
It might require, it could potentially require an easement to be required, or we might be able to fit in the right away, who knows? Let's try to think of what else. They want to know what we're gonna do for public notification. So I've got to get back to Tim with some updated information based off of the boundary change and then update the flows,
So
etc.
public notification would be what we done before.
Yeah,
Going out and asking.
that's basically what we're telling us. We're
Survey.
probably gonna canvas first with a letter to gauge interest, and then eventually we'll have a public information
Yeah.
meeting. So then he said, basically, yeah, they'd want to have someone there inspecting it. So they said it would be okay if it was an MRB observer or, if it's a county observer, we'd have to pay the county observer. So
Observer for.
the installation.
Oh,
It's just.
Yeah, exactly. So, all in all, not too bad, but get a little, a little bit of back and forth here, and then it will sit down and try to figure out.
Back and forth if you were to put a time or.
I'll probably try to have everything back to Tim next week or so.
Oh,
So
So
it won't take long.
So what are you looking at the timeline going forward?
For when we can talk to
Well,
County 20. Yeah,
that part
people
that you just cited, but then beyond that too, like. I mean, it's.
haven't put that much thought into it just yet. It was just like I just got this. The email came in last night, or yesterday afternoon.
We'll be seeing flowers in May before.
Yeah, I would say probably, this project is probably gonna be more of a 22 design, maybe 23.
I mean, given that people are
Right.
accepting of whatever
Right.
the numbers are, once you get to that point.
It'll more than likely be about a 3-year process from whenever we truly get started to having it ground.
Well, at least you got something back finally.
Yeah. No, we can, like I said, we could at least follow up on things and then get into the next point. And then hopefully have a better update with the next public person.
Does the survey include when the commitments as far as when they have to pay money? Because sometimes if you're talking a 2 or 3 year project, it could be 2 years out, 3 years out before they have to spend dime one, and maybe
They being a resident.
they being the residents, right? So they can plan for it rather than, okay, you gotta pay the money upfront or within the first year. So
Right.
that could be a factor with a lot of people in terms of not having the money now, but maybe having the money in 2 or 3 years.
Right.
know, we get to the point of having, if the interest is there, we go to, public meeting. Those kind of things we pointed out to
It's the one
to people.
put in and what they would owe.
Yeah. That ties into the next one, this ARPA funding. We have, Doug has put a letter together to send out to people in Cheshire, asking what their interest level is if the annual cost were to drop perhaps in half. I know I've seen a copy of the letter that tended to send out. You there, Doug?
You might just be listening, but
I'm here, you guys. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm also on the phone, but I'm here.
Okay. That letter should be going out sometime in the not too distant future.
Yeah, Sarah sent it back to me with a couple of revisions and stuff. We're just tightening it up. Actually, I've got it up on my screen here, but hopefully next week. So
you suggest.
Oh. Well, it was a fundraiser for a couple of weeks ago, and one of the person from Cheshire, who was a prominent individual in Hamlet, kept telling me, we don't want them. We don't want stores. Nobody wants them. So I said, okay. We're going to still go out and ask individually, like we did
Yeah, I
before.
think you need to.
We need to have that from each resident, as many of them as we can get. If there is any interest in scheduling another meeting like we had in the fire hall a couple of years ago. So,
Did we put some kind of deadline in the letter?
Yeah, so the letter brought up what we've done so far, that we had meetings in 2018, 2019, we did the survey and, found out that the residents said the cost was too high and all that, so then, there's the letter and a survey, and I think the date right now is like November 17th. Which, I don't know, that's a couple weeks after, assuming we send it out, early next week. And it just asks them, it gives them the estimate, which turns out to be like between $65 and $85 a month for some, what was it, $800 to $1,000 a year. Would you be in favor of moving forward with the project if that's what it turned out to be? It's pretty simple.
yeah.
Conditional upon.
Yeah, well, it
Income
explains,
survey.
yeah, oh, yeah, then the other question is, we need to do another income survey because the old one's too old now. In order to ask for this funding, would you be willing to fill that out? Or will you be willing to participate? But, we got a really good, a high rate of return on that before, and I don't remember what the requirement was it 90, 95%?
Once it's 95%.
And we got it, so, generally, it's mostly probably the same people.
Oh, yeah.
So if they
Nothing much
answered the
changing.
questions before, hopefully they'll answer them again.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think there's a lot of people down there clamoring for pensions, so I think this is a good way to go.
Well, it's,
and we qualified with the income survey for 51% or something.
It's good money.
Yeah, it's
I don't think much has changed in Cheshire since we did that originally, so hopefully we would qualify again, and then with this ARPA funding thrown in, probably the best deal we're ever gonna see, or that they will ever see, so just see what their reaction to tax will.
What's the split of owner occupied rentals in Cheshire?
Question. I know what they're asking, but I don't know what it is.
Got the owner, I think, got over half, but it's certainly.
Yeah, I was thinking half, but that means half to be rentals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting.
I don't know how we,
Landlord. would-
they just, this guy's going to the landlord, because he's the one that's gonna be on the hook for the payment. Yep.
We send it to the property owners
Yeah.
before, I think. So
Not
there's
necessarily
someone,
the resident.
But then from
but the
your
income
mailing list.
survey is
That's right.
who's there,
Yeah, and that's when the gentleman went door to door. to
right?
get the information.
But the letters went to property owner addresses.
The residents, I would think, would know enough that their rent is probably gonna go up because of the cost of this thing.
Well, they're also ones that replace the old system.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's an
Yeah, you think
expense
the
to it.
landlords is that tired of coming out and fixing the septic system. They have an obligation on Department of Health, I think, to keep the property safe and sanitary.
This ARPA funding, let's say, doesn't go to Cheshire. What's our next stop?
And Doug sent the letter in. Whatever form, had to go back in and say, here's how we'll. I had one, I think I ended back over or something like that. And identify what we would use the money for, but there's a lot of flexibility in that. That doesn't work for Plan B, so they don't hold you to doing that specific project, so my understanding. So it is, so you know it is. All right. Haven't heard any from,
No, and he's usually pretty.
Yeah, I
prompt.
called and left him a message. I'll
Oh,
call
okay.
and check
Oh,
and see
I
if
think-
I've got any email or anything.
move along to subdivision density discussion.
Remember why? we did that.
I was wondering that too. I was
No,
like,
was it for ours?
It's on the agenda, so what's that?
Yeah, that's,
all right, so
Because
there's-
RSM is
That's
asking
you can't
for, RSM is asking
yeah.
for a bump of density.
yeah,
Where is that?
that's down the street from you also.
They're alive
Next
as
to
well
German.
again?
Chuck can bring us up to date on where it's
Part
at.
of the,
That's a heartbeat.
there was a sketch submitted to the planning office, but we haven't seen it at the planning board level.
I think they need to look at the changes in our conservation
think so.
subdivision.
Yeah, the
before
laws have
they
changed since they're,
Come back, and I don't know whether they.
Doug 1 had gone to Doug 2, Doug Eldred, he's on his own now, he left BME, I think he's doing his own business. now.
Doug Eldridge is not on. Doug Eldridge is on his own.
Yeah. So he's not taking Doug's direction very well so far. And hey, you gotta take a look at conservation subdivision, we just proved it.
Yeah.
The old plan, the original, I was on a planning board, when they brought in the original plan, and that was 60 some odd houses, single family houses, and now they're.
That plot though, that everything was all filed.
filed,
All
and there are
those,
lots
all
of
those
records.
lots exist.
They've been paying taxes on
Yeah.
each lot for
Right.
years and years. And there's Doug.
Hi guys.
Morning.
So what they've requested is bonus density. They've also identified this piece and this piece as a town park parcel all the way up. Open space, very similar, with 68 lots here, with the lots being, I think, smaller maybe than what they were originally. I'm still unclear because this is all that we have received. We really haven't received the level of detail. It did kind of, I think, change some of these pieces here. You can see where some of this was wrapped around in different places, but there's little to no real narrative. That it's an incomplete application, clearly. And so I just had a conversation with Shauna yesterday about us going ahead and doing a determination, saying essentially that, going through it as much as we could, but saying it's an incomplete application, that there's not enough information there to make a determination. So.
Is what they're proposing now, or at least in this preliminary sketch or whatever you want to call it, that these are not single family detached houses, that they are townhome style, connected, kind of density that we have said we don't want to see in this area.
Yeah, I believe that what they would like to do are like the patio style homes.
More like Chatham Lane kind of homes.
Yeah, something similar to that. So, the other thing that I've said to them is you know, there's a variety of different things. He hasn't looked at the conservation subdivision, the new stuff. He also clearly hasn't looked obviously at the scenic view shed overlay, which I just asked them to look at, which this parcel would be impacted by that, and a variety of other things. Plus, there's no guarantee that the quote unquote park is, you know, whether or not that would be park. And one of the requests or one of the requirements for bonus density is you have to provide some sort of open space. And I think one of the issues that they are incorrectly doing right now, a major issue, is they're saying that they are going to sell the town the land at a price tag of presumably over $1 million and also get bonus density for that. I just think they're out to lunch on this. That's
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
I don't think the sentiment on the town board is in their corner.
Even if they gave it to us, they couldn't count it anymore.
right.
right.
But they are talking about patio style, so they be individual houses. I mean, like Chatham Lane, like Greg indicated, not connected 2s and 3s and 4s.
Yeah, not like Canandaigua Shore. That layout, I don't think really lend, like the topography that's there, and then the layout does not lend itself to, you know, where you have 4 units together.
That was on a lot of this.
Yeah, so I've asked them to go back and look at the updated sections of code and sent them the various stuff, and you know, kind of got a lackluster response. They're adamant they're wanting to get moving, but on the other hand, they also I don't think have done the homework to figure it out. So
Well, I think you're on the right track, make them do their homework, but I haven't heard anything that would make me think we ought to change the density.
Doug is very similar. We're dealing with Doug Eldridge and Thorne, kind of the same thing. Just kind of has an idea, and we keep telling him that his ideas don't really work. So
State of BME.
Hmm.
Okay, well, that's all future then, so.
Yep.
Not a whole lot we can do at this point.
Well, they have a bad history of not wanting to follow rules, you know, make me some special rules. You know.
You're right, Al.
Thing goes back a long.
A
it's
long
gotta be
ways.
15, 16 years at least. So,
Mhm.
all right, capital improvements, road maintenance, that was something that you wanted to leave on here to discuss the longer range strategic.
You know,
plan.
yeah, so last year sometime, I put together like the pavement condition index of the roads, the cost of the fixed roads, and to help us understand what it is that we need to budget for in the future. And we know that we want to improve North Road and put in sidewalks. That's one of the ones that is on the top of our list to do. But I think we need to discuss how we're going to fund this, plus fund the other work that has to be done just to maintain our roads. Because we can't continually take, say, $500,000 a year and take us 3 years to do a project. I don't know if it's worth considering, because this could be a long-term project. I know we don't like to do this, but do we consider bonding something for this size of project and cost, just so that it doesn't take away from the general repairs? I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just talking out loud, but it seems that we know we have large projects that have to be completed, but it also, like, we don't have revenue coming in to fund that project plus other projects. So it's a matter of, do we want another town line road that takes us 4 years to get done and we had shared cost with that? Or do we want to discuss putting together a bond and a capital project right off instead of the 5110 line that we use for general repairs, a separate capital project to get North Road done? Because I don't know how we can have money to do everyday repairs and maintenance, plus also money to fix this road.
So one thing I can tell you that, and I just got this information from Donegan, not because we talked about this, was actually because I was talking to a different municipality. If you can pay back whatever the project is in 5 years, you do not need to do a bond resolution. So you guys, if you can pay it back within 5 years, you can take out a ban. I'm not sure if you guys knew that, but I learned that the other day, so passing that along.
But you still have to get that band payment every year.
Right, yeah, exactly. You'd have to, I mean, you just take out a no, that's, they can make them callable, right? So,
Right.
or, they basically decide what to do, so, but if you pay back your capital expenses over, that ban expense over the 5-year period, you don't have to go through the bond resolution, this is a referendum, et cetera. That part goes away.
Yeah, the bigger question, I think, is.
But I don't know if
that money.
Yeah,
To pay back that payment over 5 years.
yeah,
I mean, that's a-
I went to Doug this year and I asked for 2 million in repairs.
right.
I got $1.4 million, something like that, which is great, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying, there's that type of work out there. We have
Right.
many older subdivisions.
But then what you got numbers, specific roads.
Right.
Is there a report that summarizes all that can be given to the town board?
I'll email to them.
Okay,
It's all set on a spreadsheet, so. And,
maybe with some kind of summary from you that says this is.
Right.
Because we're just kicking can down the road, sooner or later, work's gotta be done, or people are gonna be driving over.
well, we have some large projects, I shouldn't say large project, some priority projects of North Road, where we know that we haven't touched in years on purpose because we want to rebuild it. But we've been holding up because we want the water main replaced by Farmington, so that we're not repairing something and the water main breaks and makes a mess of our project. So, and we know we'll put sidewalk on one side of the road. We struggled with easements. I think we're gonna try and just stay within our right of way, which might need a little bit of moving of the road a little bit, one side or the other, to make everything fit. So, that's something that I would like to see us do in 23. Start working on North Road.
One of the things we talked briefly about, you weren't here last month, but, this infrastructure bit. So if you look at the whole town and we get some kind of windfall from this infrastructure bill, where would you want to first point the money? North Road?
North Road be one of them. I don't know how the infrastructure bill is gonna be put out there, Al. I really have no idea how a town would get that money. I'm not sure if they're looking more at federally funded projects that, major interstates, major bridges versus us down here who may or may not see something.
All that,
Michael,
but if there was money there, where we getting?
North Road, I would aim it at. I would probably, yeah, first list, there's,
So Jim, I was just adding up here, I was just looking in the budget. So in the 22 budget, there's a total between different lines that spread across different lines for engineering services for North Road of $71,250. So Greg, don't write that down. We'll put out an RFP since it's not the number. So, but the first, like in the A fund, there's money for engineering, like what I'm showing here on the screen for North Road. Because of sidewalk, it's in the A fund. And then like in the D fund, there's money for actually the engineering for actually North Road reconstruction. So I think when we had talked, what we were talking about, like here's 50,000 here. I think what we had talked about was doing the engineering in 22 in preparation for hopeful construction in 23, right?
correct.
And if we're in design in 22, Doug, if this infrastructure bill hits, I mean, that gives us plenty of time to apply for funding in 22.
Right.
New construction.
my thinking is that, the best thing would be to earmark that money for much needed huge projects, but I think it's gonna be parceled out. That's my opinion, so I think we need to be thinking about what we would do with it.
I agree.
And then, not try to do any bonding or anything until that thing comes out and we find out what's gonna happen there, because I think we'll get a piece of the pie, but we'll see.
Yeah, if we can get some of that free money, that's
You know, we,
is there any estimate of what North Road?
yeah, it was well over a million,
Yeah,
Yeah, it was-
I don't know.
How much?
well over $1 million. So,
It's almost as much as what you got for next year and
yeah,
road maintenance.
correct. If you were to do that road in 1 year, you know, get done, you would be using all that, our budget just for that,
Expensive stuff.
so. So,
That was just there.
oh, okay. So, and then there's, oh, go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to say, to Jim's point, though, you know, we are still in the beginning of 2020 with COVID, we did a pretty significant budget reduction, COVID reduction with that COVID budget, specifically roads, and we held off, and we're still not funding even for 22 at the same level, at the same pace that we were prior to that. So to Jim's point, he's put off projects a couple of years now, and it's to a point where we've got to figure out, you know, kind of where things are going to go. I mean, you see here 1.3 million is the number for 22. You go back just a few years ago, it was 1.5, 1.564, and even before that, it was even higher than that. So, you know, there's some catch-up work to do here for sure.
Well, wasn't the intent of the federal, the infrastructure money to sort of help you get back to where you were, what you deferred during the COVID? And I think that would be the justification, if that money does trickle down, to put it back into projects that were deferred back in 2020. And obviously that one of those being worth it.
You know, yes, it would be, you know, but even in 22 budget, let me go back a bit. In 21, the federal government gave the states money, which then they took and put into our CHIPS fund. It was a 1-year thing
21.
in 21. So we got additional more, like 60,000 more, 80,000 more, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But I budgeted in 22 the sum that we always get, because I have no idea come March what the state of New York's going to do. Now, if they give us that same funding, great, we'll put it towards the highway fund. But I can't depend that the state is going to have that type of revenue again to share with the municipalities with CHIPS funding. And the reason why that is also is we have not had a 5-year agreement with the state on funding in 3 years. They've been doing it year by year. So they won't commit to a lot of funding like the extreme weather recovery. 1 year they pulled it and they gave it back. So paved New York, it gets lost, they put it back. So it's hard for all of us to budget.
Not knowing what the allocation is going to be for chips.
Correct.
That's something they should give you. Used to get to Pennsylvania, we knew what your liquid fuels money was going to be for the subsequent year, and then you could budget around that money and how you're going to use it.
Correct.
They don't do that here,
Well,
or they do, but they
they
change.
do, but they change it. So you don't know, Chuck, exactly. So it's a struggle. And it's tough because we're doing our budget in August. We don't know come April 1st what the state's gonna have for us. So we're being conservative of going what we've traditionally received.
Has the board endorsed your capital or maintenance schedule in terms of using the program, the maintenance program, the pavement program that you used to?
I don't think we have done that, Chuck, like necessarily.
Just never,
If you get a commitment to
That's why I'm
that,
asking.
that would help you ensure, that, okay, next year, you know, we're supposed to have, you know, $500,000 for oil chip and that kind of stuff.
that's.
But right
why I
now, it's
asked
just
the
sort of,
question. You gotta, it's never been presented to.
No, we've talked about it, but not presented.
because you get them to sign on to it, then they know that every year they've got to look, okay, what do we got in the program for next
I
year?
brought it up to the board, but during my report from the Public Works Committee, on board meeting, but there's never been any active discussion. And, you know, up on the screen, looking at the numbers and saying, here's how we're going to attack it. You know, so
Well, the
that's what
numbers
has to
are
happen.
pretty alarming too. When we
Oh.
looked at it,
Oh,
and we
million
started
dollars.
at, what, 16 million or something?
Between 12 and 15 million for.
Over how many years?
Well, that was
That's-
just,
Those are all the
that
roads
was just
that
like
all the-
today, this was like a capture, like, okay,
It's like,
So we sorted the
every-
pavement index, 0 is the lowest.
Right.
And so I think we looked at, it goes from 0 to 100.
100,
And so I think we looked at what, 5 and under,
yeah, we had,
and it was 12 to 16 million dollars.
so,
5 out of 100.
That was a while ago. And every
Snapshot.
day, those roads are deteriorating.
The
so
most
that number-
immediate.
Going up, yeah, well, it's like the,
Yeah.
it's like the bridges estimates, like the federal
That's an
government.
alarming.
The bridges are getting.
Well, that $12 million is, eclipses our annual total.
right.
budget.
But again, I kind of think now's not a good time to present this to the board. Let's see what shakes out on this
Well-
infrastructure thing, and then maybe we can.
I think
present it.
Well-
And something that we could discuss putting together here, together as a group
Yeah.
first, then go to the town board with about 100%.
Maybe, our next meeting in December, we could put that on the agenda, at least see what the numbers are,
Okay,
where it
alright.
is, and what, you know.
Yeah, if you
We
can
can look at the
come up
pavement
with your
index.
top priorities and we may have to draw a line, you know, or we may not get nothing, but I tend to think we're gonna get something.
Well, and I think the reason we put it on the agenda is because we had spoken about taking the pavement index and making something similar to like we have a vehicle
Right.
replacement policy. Turning it into kind of a schedule like that and
Yeah.
trying to kind of break it down.
So,
Difference is though, that, well, and we absolutely, that's why. Was a vehicle replacement, everybody knows those trucks aren't gonna last forever. Don't think that the roads, people don't think that, they think the road's always gonna be there, always gonna be in good shape. Not true, but I think it's easy to see about trucks rust, everybody's car rusts and keep them 5, 6, 7, 8 years and then you trade it or whatever. This is, and the numbers don't fit. You know, trucks, we're talking 300 grand maybe for a 10-wheeler or something.
we're at
Here, we're talking
255.
millions of dollars for one road maybe.
So,
But it needs to be out there.
so just trying to think a little bit, what's our next category beyond roads? So do we have any? big
Well, we gotta
culvert
discuss
issue?
water,
You got
Culvert
water,
issue?
culvert,
ACC pipe.
storm sewers,
storm.
yeah, storm, yeah, storm sewers.
And we got a large water, I say project, I won't call it a project yet, but we have we gotta find a way to start replacing our 50-ish-year-old pipe that's in the ground to upgrade it. And that's not gonna be cheap.
20 miles. Pipe.
For ACP, probably around 30. We got miles of ACP. And it goes all over the place in the south end of
We
town.
have seen deterioration.
Well, not only the pipe, it's all the fittings, the valves, and the valves are so hard to turn, just 50 years of chlorine, okay, just everything's brittle. So they don't want to see, they don't want to turn. Oh, it's like my back. It's
So
old.
it can hurt your back.
That's right. Guys can hurt their backs like me, buddy.
See, if we had a good valve, you wouldn't hurt your back.
Well, that's true. I understand.
We lost it.
But that's daunting, 30 miles. I mean, if you replaced a mile a year, it'd be 30 years before you replace it. And that pipe would be, 90 years old. I mean, it's just crazy.
But that's, I mean, that's what gives this infrastructure bill in Washington, the push, I mean, is our bridges, say,
Like, yeah,
the whole country is.
that's supposed to be the reason for it, you know, everything's deteriorating, we need to.
Right.
You know, bring it up their butts and gas.
People tend to think.
You know,
bridges and roads
But
are
even when they
less
pass
work.
with concerns with it, when does it ever get to us?
Yeah.
Like, how do we get it? You know, I don't have any answer right now. I'm just saying, you know, I imagine it's gotta be going to some large projects.
But if it goes through the route that this ARPA funding, I mean, if they use a pathway like that, I mean, that money could come down to us. I mean, we got what we're getting, we got half of it already, we get the other half next year, so they use a similar type mechanism for delivery. We get something.
15
Until they pass it, I mean,
Right, but 15, 16 years ago, we had the ARA money, AR, American Recovery Act money, whatever, right? So that was funneled through RD and SRF. So that's where a large chunk of the infrastructure money ended up going. I don't know if they'll, if this new bill will again focus on water and sewer. But it feels like generally that's where people want to put money towards, water plants, wastewater plants. Et cetera. I don't recall any of the ARA money really falling into highway for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
highway kind of they get the scraps, I think.
well, I guess they'd have to pass it though before we could find out.
Yeah.
what's in the bill.
All right.
True.
Heard somebody say that.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe we take a look at that next month. And
Yeah.
see what's actually in it for our own application.
Okay.
Your city.
Well, Bush Water needs that, that thing's been lingering. for a
So,
while.
we've been talking about Quail Bush because it's not been dedicated to the town since 1986, we'll say. Okay, somewhere in that range. This is a newer map from BME for their other phases, because the original map you can't really read so well. So when this phase over here, Chuck, I don't, we'll call it 3, I'm not sure, the ones that show the developments by Cedar Bush. They wanted to dedicate that to the town, and I said, well, we can't take dedication of it because the other water main is not dedicated to the town. The town's been maintaining the water main and the water services off it, but we just never paid. We really shouldn't be because nothing's dedicated to the town. The Department of Health now is involved because they want us to take that first phase and dedication so they can get that section of water main approved to be connected to the public water main. It's not, it's considered private. So recently, the HOA of the Quail Bush subdivision had their attorney contact our attorney and has asked that we take dedication of this water main. When they say water main, they mean anything that was installed back in 84, 86 era. And anything new. And I am not in favor of that. The first reason is the original sections of Quail Bush, the water main itself is correct material. The materials off the water main serving the townhomes is not, it's glued together Schedule 40 PVC with brass fittings. Okay, so it's miserable to fix. We fixed a few of them because we've been courteous to them, but I don't believe that we should maintain any of that because it's not the town's standards.
It's like a service level.
Right, and then the new sections they have built there, because the water main is behind the houses, I'm sure there's gonna be patios, landscaping, whatever they want to do over that water main and curb stop. And I don't want to be no control, and I don't want to be traipsing behind these properties to do whatever work we have to get to, because we really don't have any easements other than a 20-foot easement, but then we got fences that might be in the way or something. So when I spoke to Chris Badler this week, I mentioned to him, I said, look, I highlighted in yellow, which is just the 8-inch water main and 3 fire hydrants and the pressure reducing well that the town will consider offering this piece here because we know we can maintain the 8-inch, but anything off it is completely up to the HOA that's on their property. So
Will they be allowed to put in RPZs?
they already have that full, I'm sorry, in their house now.
They have them in their house.
Well, I'm assuming they do because we required it, so. And there's RPZ, RPV. or PRV,
PRV,
PRVs, yes.
yeah, feeding.
You know, because we have a PRV out at the road. So, that's it in a quick nutshell. I mean, it went out for years about this. It was even before Chuck Hecker about this project.
How do you build them? Do you build them individually units or do you build the HOA?
They all have meters in them,
Okay.
so we'll bill for the water consumption for the year. But what I want to do is just take the 8-inch water.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
That's it.
That's, yeah,
Okay.
that's
That's
great.
it.
But it is 35 years old. So
Yeah, it's probably, yeah, it was DR 14 8-inch water main.
do a conditional upon inspection.
Right. You know, that's my suggestion, that, okay,
And
we'll
you
try
have-
to,
You have an
give it-
easement over it? right
we-
now? You-
no, because there's nothing over it that's been filed.
So you have to at least.
Right.
Reasonable position. I mean, how could you take the whole thing and go in and disrupt, place patio fences, whatever? I mean, that's it's not reasonable.
Individual water service.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason that, like your home. Town doesn't come to the house. Fix your service.
Yeah, I think your proposal is reasonable,
It's
best interest of the town.
So
right.
what, so what does Chris need to go back to the other attorney, to basically need an outline of what's in non-conformance with town standards and why we're not taking it, and then.
He has several correspondence from myself and the previous HOA president, Don DeSmith. He was good to work with. About, and with Chris Iverson, who I think originally started this project. Or maybe got involved, I don't know, he's somehow involved.
He was here.
He was here, we met with Chris, yeah,
And Don too.
and,
Yeah.
yep. So, my point being is I think this is a fair option for both parties. Like, look, we're not gonna put in a master meter out front and then you charge your customers. We'll continue maintaining the 8-inch water main and the pressure reducing well out front. You deal with anything that's off the 8-inch water main, because we don't want to be back in people's yards.
So what would happen hypothetically if there was a water main break in the part maintained by the HOA?
Then they would repair it themselves.
So they have to find the contractor who would do it?
Correct.
We missed out on that water though.
Yeah,
We could turn it off because there's a curb stop, there's a valve at each.
okay, so we could shut just that leg off, we wouldn't have to.
We would shut
the
off,
whole-
no, we would shut off 4 people.
Okay, but it wouldn't be the entire
Right,
section,
not the entire
it would just be that leg.
What they're asking, they have service to their house. Our purview is that we would, if there's a problem there, we fix it.
Correct.
I want that myself.
Right.
We do it there.
So,
In fact, I had to do that in my house.
yes, you did.
I paid for it.
Yes, you did.
Oh, that's.
So, but again, not to repeat myself, but like, I think if we offered that to maintain it, if they don't like it, the next option is to put a master meter out front and say it's not all
Including.
everything.
Billing
Yeah,
their
They
customer.
would just stick a master meter in the vault or that structure. And we would just bill them quarterly and they could figure out how to.
They can figure it out.
There are places that we do that.
Yep.
We call it insurance.
Yes.
Does anybody uphill off-site need that feed? Do they connect to this at all?
Yeah, there's somehow, I don't know if it's on there, Chuck, but on the older plans,
Yeah.
which are hard to read, there's a 2-inch service that goes up and feeds those other units.
Okay. One more reason I think it should be town maintenance, because it services off-site for the properties.
Oh, no, yeah, it ends right there, that's where it ends, so. Yes.
Reasonable decision.
So, okay.
What do they do with the sewer? Sanitary, is it county?
The county, I don't know what the county does, I know it
Sewer
runs
here.
through there,
And then
Right.
that comes there.
but the sewer, I think maybe they just maintain the sewer main, not any laterals. Because typically they don't maintain the laterals now.
same would apply with the water.
Right. Then, we could on that,
Like you gotta establish some kind of easement so that it can't, something new can't pop up.
correct, over the water.
That will take care of the contract,
Yes,
that will take care of it.
he will respond back to, yeah. I think he's a boiling code, so.
Get it inspected,
Right,
needs any repairs, it'd be at their cost.
correct. Mhm.
What would a typical inspection include, pressure test or something? If you were gonna test an old water main.
You normally don't do pressure tests on existing mains,
Why?
it's just because if you're gonna go 1.5 times the working pressure, you don't know what you're gonna blow up.
Yeah, I don't, listen. I would probably just.
Well,
Probably
there's 2 hydrants, look at the condition of the
Right.
hydrants, make sure they.
be functional.
Wait.
Wait.
Look for any obvious sign.
That's about it. Yes,
Is there any way we could hook a meter up in the PRV and like a hydrant on the end just to see if there's any leakage in between?
no, because I don't wanna mess with the 2-inch plastic that comes off the water main itself, unless we turn those hooks off.
Oh, sure, of
So,
course.
you know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
then if the valve doesn't turn off for some reason, we depressurize it and it starts popping shit apart. Then we're at fault. So if it's that,
You can blow the toilets off
oh, yeah.
the seats.
And wait and pray.
You got a day then, Terry, okay? So,
That's the position to take.
Okay.
This isn't something that needs town board approval, I don't know.
it will,
They have to be
it
the
will,
right-
eventually,
Yeah.
eventually we'll get there to accept
Yeah.
dedication of the 8-inch water main with the language spelled out of the easement.
I mean, going back, putting that together, we don't need to get their approval to take the next step. Going in that words.
Yeah. That's correct.
That brings us to the end of the list here, except for 1 and 2.
Well, I've got one here.
Oh,
for
you
you,
got
'cause-
another one.
Well, I know
He's
it's
got
garbage.
some bonus.
You got
He's got
your-
some
Well, I do, but I'm like, it's
Oh,
always
we're
tough
getting
to know
bonus.
way up, but
So what happens when you get
so,
reelected?
I know, well, I'm not gonna talk about all this, I just got written down for notes. So, in the water department, for the past 7 years, 8 years, we've gone through 4 different people. Besides myself and Mike as a second person. To back up myself and Mike who have licenses, because you have to have 2 water licenses. By Department of Health, so that you can operate your system. Recently, we were told that the 3rd person we hired will be resigning in January. So we've been doing interviews to get one person to come work for us who has experience in water. And then we have another that we like to consider, which will get us to 3. But what I'm looking to add is a labor position just for doing water meters, stakeouts, and the annual daily reporting of the pumps and equipment in the system. And we have 2,700, give or take, meters that have to be replaced over the next 2 years, which last time we replaced meters in Earths, it took us over 2 years of one guy doing it. Because it's just, time consuming to get it done. I'm looking to speak to you about, do you think having a labor position in the water department for just a position of installing meters, stakeouts, inspections, and doing the report every day, so that I can take the 3 guys I have, well, I only have 1 right now, but the other 2 that we'd like to hire in the water department, so they can go out and do the work that has to be done, because I'm really hoping these 2 guys will stay this time, because it seems like every time we get someone somewhat up to training, they're going somewhere else. Okay, and it's,
You train them when they leave.
yeah, and it's a bear. It's very, very tough to get somebody to know all this stuff, Chuck, so.
Come back.
um,
Morning.
Good morning. So my question to the committee, the full board meeting is, would you be in favor of creating a labor position in the water department? Or just the purpose of all these water meters that have to be maintained for the next several years, to get them up to date?
So to be clear, we currently have 3 water maintenance assistant positions, Mike Boyce, and then we have somebody who just retired, and then we have somebody who put in their notice, they're leaving in January. So we've already done interviews, and there'll be a resolution to hire somebody for the currently open position for the person who retired on the agenda. Then we have a person leaving in January, who we sort of, one of the people we interviewed, we'd like to fill in that position. And then Jim wants to create a 4th position that would be a laborer, not a water maintenance assistant position.
Right.
It would be a different title, which is currently not, we don't have an open position. And did you want to talk about the maintenance too, all the maintenance that we're not really able to keep up on?
Well, we've got, remember, we've taken on all these subdivisions. When I say all of them, like all the ones for Morels, we're gonna add more for Morel. We've taken on Hopewell. We've taken on more in Foxbridge, which is a lot, but each year we keep adding to our system. We've not added to our system over the years. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get annual maintenance done. I try to break up the town in quadrants when we see we don't have enough staff to do it.
Well, you're looking at the annual annual salary.
Oh, I would probably think the labor position is somewhere between $8 and $20 per hour, $18 and $20 per hour, somewhere in that range. They don't have a water license, they won't be plowing snow. They're basically just to do the daily stuff that has to be done with the water meters and the actual reports that have to be done with the state.
One of the questions that comes to them is we just passed the budget.
Yeah.
And,
I know.
So you have done a little like.
what did
If
you
I-
propose it, but it got knocked out?
No,
You were
no,
never
it's
gonna
not.
get
Well,
this other meeting before you talked about it.
at the point of budget, I did not know this person was leaving.
But you're adding
I want to add one more
labor,
labor.
whether that person stayed or went, the labor
Is
that's new, but
that's, you know,
you didn't ask for it during the budget.
No. But if I only get to take 2 new people on in less than 2 months, I want to get them focused on the system and not so much worried about the meters, and have this one person focus on meters. Which means I have to give up some of the water to pay for that.
So the resolution, got it, put it on our agenda. See what the rest of the board
What's
thinks.
next?
I mean, it sounds reasonable to me.
I'll bring it up to finance too, so.
Are you wanting that to go on this agenda or next?
Let's
Do
speak
today
to
if you want it
finance.
on
That'd be like news, right?
Yeah.
Well-
Do you want that done in the next hour or next month?
It will get over there. I mean, not be new, but it'll get over there.
Jim, when we took on
You
Hopewell,
want-
was there any
Motion
consideration
to
of
put it together,
requiring additional manpower?
get it on. the
There was, that's
agenda.
when we talked about the 3rd position that we brought out.
Oh,
So that was the third
No, he
position.
had to go to the meeting.
Yeah, so
So-
now you're just, they don't do it.
'Cause I thought you
No,
said-
I spoke to Doug, actually, just so you know, just so everybody knows, I have spoken to Doug about this.
Yeah.
He's not opposed to it, okay, so,
It won't be the first time.
yeah, I mean, I'm not blindsiding Doug or anything, I
Put
spoke
it
to
together
Doug,
and put it on the agenda.
so, yeah, it's just we're,
So, you know, you say one person's leaving, that you can use names because we only got a couple people there.
I know, but I don't want
January.
this, I don't know if that's what we should do in this setting, because it's an employee, I don't
Well,
wanna.
you're,
Well,
you and Mike.
Yeah, and if I-
we're also, they just,
People-
we're talking at the staff meeting about, you know, you can only resign 30 days before your end date.
All right, but let me just put it this way, there's 4, you got 4 people.
No, right now I have 2 people.
Well, I mean, look at,
Mark Scott just retired.
well,
Right.
yeah, But before he left, you had 4 people.
No, I
Oh,
have
you.
three.
With.
Well, and me
Okay.
counting is 4.
You, Mike, and 2 other people.
Right.
The other 2 people are gonna be gone.
Right.
Yes.
So that identifies to me who the other guy was.
Right.
I didn't realize he was leaving.
Yeah, well, that was told to us last week,
Process elimination.
so. All right.
All right.
He has prior commitments.
Gotcha.
Family.
Family commitments, thank you. Caitlin, yes.
Family business.
Yes, so.
What else? you
So-
got?
Interesting. I
Well, you got-
thought this was 11. I am very sorry. I had this on my calendar for 11 o'clock, so I apologize profusely.
Did you have anything else on this process for?
No, oh, real quick, so I apologize. What we've had for years is called Network Fleet, which are GPS equipment that we use in our equipment for tracking, maintenance, things of that nature. Network Fleet is going as far as they can with what their abilities are for tracking and providing information. They have a new program out now called Reveal. Reveal is the same thing as Network Fleet, just a new company has taken it to the next level. New York State OGS has not renewed the Network Fleet agreement. But through Sourcewell, we can go through Reveal, because right now we need additional cables and cords for our newer equipment. But we cannot get those because Network Fleet, we don't want to go Network Fleet for 1 and 2. They can't get the materials they need for the GPS. So we want to go to Reveal, which the equipment, there's no charge for. There's a little more in the fee, annually, like a little bit, Caitlin,
It's like $1 more per month.
per month for this service. But this service also will now allow us to work with, which, and the whole other subject is the snowplow contract with the county, which I'll come back to you guys with once we meet with the county about how much we should be getting for this. But with this Reveal, we now can use it for sander on, sander off, plow on, up, plow down. And it stores data for a year. So when we are physically driving up and down County Road 30, pushing back the drifts, was it plow up or plow, so I can take that data to the county and say, look, this is what we're doing on your roads. Here's why we need more money. So,
It's a much
$1
more.
per vehicle, what?
Per vehicle per month. It's a much more robust platform. They're gonna do a pro install for free, so they'll come and put new units in all of our vehicles at no cost. And with the current platform, we can't add any additional vehicles to it, and we just got a whole bunch of new trucks, we got new plow trucks coming. We use it for tracking maintenance, oil changes, things like that. It's just a much more robust platform. Eventually, Network Fleet is no longer gonna be supported, it's only a matter of years, so.
Sounds like a no-brainer. Yeah,
it does, I just,
Gotta do it now.
Yeah.
Gotta do it. Plus you get a lot more.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the one with
well, there-
no resolution.
I keep looking at it, but there's still nothing in it.
oh, that's a Reveal one.
We got,
Verbal.
Oh, there's a lot of
I
paper.
got three resolutions right.
Actually, that's all I got.
Well, what about the permit policy?
Oh.
About that?
All right, so I got turned on. It is hot.
I
Yeah.
tried, it just keeps getting warmer.
I know, sorry. A few months ago, we asked the committee to discuss the procurement for highway and water to go from 1,000 to 3,000. Okay, so what that's caused me, when I do things for the A fund, is that kind of forget about that 1,000, 3,000, I'm thinking of 3,000. So I would like to propose to the committee is we make everything 3,000 across the board for the A, the D, and the water accounts.
Cause we've been helping with like a lot of projects for the parks and stuff, and so in Jim's mind, there's a $3,000 limit, and then sometimes it's not clear if it technically is counting as public works. It's just not really clear whether things need to be under the 1,000 or the 3,000 threshold, and so it's just causing some confusion between Kate and I when we try and go to pay the bills, because there's not really a clear direction.
So I don't bring it to the finance committee, but I'm just wondering how you guys feel about it. They get everything the same for everybody.
I thought you brought that up before.
What's that?
I thought you had brought it up before.
And they amended it for highway, like special districts, so like highway,
Oh, okay,
water,
okay.
fund as well.
So we just rolled it into.
Right.
But
Off the
anything in the
line.
A fund still has the $1,000,
I didn't realize
unless it's considered
Yeah,
a public
so-
works contract.
Thought it was three.
Yeah.
Period.
Okay.
Would that apply to all departments then? If you,
Yeah. So everybody's the same.
so if Sarah's buying something.
Right.
Okay, well.
Today's day and age,
Sounds,
3,000 sounds.
Sounds like-
We can go far.
It's a little like, that's just-
No, we're not asking for any more, okay?
How's Jean feel about it? Jean?
I have not spoken to Jean, so I'll have to ask her, so.
I don't see a problem.
I don't think you've
Put
had a
that
chance
as
to
a
speak with
list,
Doug about that.
No, I have not, so.
Just get one resolution right.
Yeah.
Multiple clauses.
Yeah, that one's
The
probably
meetings
gonna
get
get bumped to
longer.
December.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
don't
go
think-
December.
I don't think that's happening.
Yeah. That's all I got.
I'll go back to number one.
We'll circle
Number
back.
one.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know why I had this on my calendar for 11. I was sitting at home for a half hour going over the presentation before I came, so I was getting ready. I was ready to go. So my sincere
This guy
apologies.
hadn't had those 3 or 4 extra
Oh,
things.
man, I would
want
want-
to.
I would have walked into that. Well, I went to the wrong building to begin with, so it's just that kind of a day.
Oh, no.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys about this. Some of you may remember me as the assistant city manager in Canandaigua for about 4 years. I have moved on to a new position as the Clean Energy Communities Coordinator for our 9-county region. So what I do is I work with any one of the 192 municipalities that we have to try and help them explore clean energy options to help ultimately save operating costs for the municipality. So we're finding that the technologies that are available now are doing that, and they're substantially reducing costs in heating and cooling and potentially fleet electrification. The one thing that I did talk to Doug and to Caitlin and Sarah about the last time we were here, though, was community choice aggregation. And it was something that they seemed interested in and wanted me to bring to the table to talk to you guys about, because there's been some changes in it that make it a lot more municipal friendly and can actually guarantee savings for residents on their electric bill. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Of course. So just a little bit about my background. I have a bachelor's of politics and government, so I don't come from a traditional planner's background like a lot of my colleagues do. I come at this from the municipal side, and I think it's an actual benefit because one of my greatest frustrations with my employer is they don't understand how municipal governments work. And they don't understand budgetary constraints and policies that you need to follow. And you can't just sign a contract and commit to a grant because there's a match attached to that you're going to need to contribute, which requires board approval. Small things like that. But the real key up there is I did a master's in public administration focusing on public management and public policy. And right out of that program, John Goodwin plucked me up to be the assistant city manager in Canandaigua. And as soon as I started there, all of the city's environmental programs and initiatives fell on my desk, which included the Clean Energy Communities Program, Climate Smart Communities. And during my tenure there, I guided the city to both designations, which is something I'm pretty proud of. The CSC program is kind of a heavy lift in some places, but it's a really special designation because there's only 70 or so municipalities in the state that have that right now. And there's 962 municipalities across New York State. So it really is a special differentiator. My love for doing that environmental work for the city was ultimately what brought me to Genesee Finger Lakes. My predecessor moved on to another opportunity. I loved doing this so much with the city that I wanted to be able to do it with everybody. So essentially I get to do my favorite part of my job, working with John across the entire 9-county region, which for me is really exciting. In the little bit of spare time that I do have, I coach. I've been the boys varsity assistant at Harley-Annville Columbia for 17 years. And I coach the Canandaigua Tech boys U18 career team. Helps keep me youngish as I age quickly, just like day to day. But the one cool thing about that for me is it allows me to talk to the next generation about what they want and what they think is important for the planet and what they think is important in terms of clean energy or clean community goals. So it gives me a different perspective that I wouldn't have otherwise. So what is community choice aggregation?
really simply put, it's an energy purchase program that's authorized by the Public Service Commission that allows municipalities to aggregate energy demand and negotiate bulk purchase prices. So a lot of people don't know that whenever you move into a house or an apartment, you automatically are put into a default electric supply. That default electric supply is pretty similar to what you see up there. About 30% of that is fossil fuels, so coals, natural gas, that type of thing. A large portion of it in New York State is nuclear and hydroelectric, and then other renewables. But what we're seeing is other renewables, in particular solar, are starting to pick up a lot of steam. So there's going to be a higher factor of contribution to this percentage moving forward. But you know, anytime you want, you can choose your own energy supply, whether it's right when you move in, whether it's a couple of years down the road. You always have the option to decide how you want to electrify your home, essentially. Not a lot of people know that. So what community choice aggregation does is it pools all of the people in your community, or the ones that want to participate in the program, or in multiple communities, and you go to the market to purchase 100% renewable energy at a bulk cost, which should reduce the price and make it less expensive than what you're paying for your typical RG ground product. In most cases, I say that with an asterisk because we'll talk about some of the math behind this in a few slides. But ultimately, the goal of community choice aggregation is twofold. One, it's to eliminate fossil fuels. We know that those are one of the larger contributors to pollution concerns. Single family home with natural gas, propane burning constantly, it does tend to put things into the air that aren't so friendly. But the other thing that it really does is it empowers communities to decide how they want to heat and cool their homes, how they want to power their homes. And we're finding now with the addition of community solar to the program as an opt-out that you can guarantee savings for your residents, which is something that we couldn't do before. So one of the projects that I did when I was the assistant city manager was actually walk us through community choice aggregation. It was part of the original CEC program, the round one. But at the time, it wasn't something that the city was really interested in pursuing for a couple of reasons. Number one, there was a really heavy administrative burden on staff. Your staff would have been responsible for administering the program, running the program, handling the opt-in, opt-out calls, doing all the billing. We did not have the capacity for that, and we knew that right away. So we stopped kind of looking at this almost straight on, but there was a couple of other reasons why we didn't really move forward to begin with. The other one being that the city was really only interested in a 100% renewable supply. As you guys are aware, we live on a beautiful lake that provides drinking water to about 70,000 people in the region. So maintaining the cleanliness of our region is very important because it contributes not only to tourism and economic development, but the general health of our communities. And also at the time, many suppliers were pushing mixed products. So they would give you half renewable and then half coal, which if you think about the graphic that we saw on the slide before, that's actually a worse breakdown in terms of fossil fuel consumption because you're actually using more fossil fuels at that point. We also could not guarantee savings. And there's a common phrase in municipal management, no matter how much sense it makes, it still has to make sense, CENTS. Whether you agree with climate change or the environmental impact of these things, it's ultimately about what it's going to cost your residents to power their homes, right? And even if green energy is the right way to go, there's no way that we could expect our residents to stomach a 2 or 3x multiple on their supply costs. That's just ridiculous. We would never ask them to do that. So until we knew that we could protect them in terms of their price point, we weren't going to move forward. And then also in general, the task seemed overwhelming. How are we going to reach all 11,000 people that live in the city? How are we going to convince them that this is a good idea? How are they even going to think this is a good idea? Are we way overstepping our bounds? And we kind of psyched ourselves out a little bit, to be quite honest. A lot of that was based on assumptions. A lot of it was based on feedback from other community members about things that had nothing to do with this, but we'd seen how they were reacting and were concerned that that was going to be a repeat type situation. And then about a year after we looked at this initially, CCA added something that was really a game changer, and that is the third-party administrator. Now with CCA, you have the ability to choose a third party to run the program for you. So they handle all of the billing, they handle all of the opt-in, opt-out process, they deal with the Public Service Commission, They do all the business end of it. They remove that completely from your staff, which for us was a huge, okay, now we can actually look at this because we see some benefit. And, you know, with our participation in CEC and CSC, this was a big item for us to potentially complete. They also go to market for you on behalf of that aggregation. So whether it's just your community or a group of communities, they're actually the ones that go to the table, say, this is what we're looking for. This is the price point we're looking for. Can you get us there? They also are a huge part of the entire process because they're your community engagement education partner. So when you select your third-party administrator, it's not just, okay, here you go, figure it out, have fun. They actually want to come back to the table with you, and they want to understand what's important for your community. What are the things that you want to accomplish? How is the best way to frame this so that your community understands what the town's intent is and what you're trying to accomplish? So they're an active partner. They're with you every step of the way, even after implementation. So they continue to work with you. And they really support the municipality however necessary. Some of that support comes in, they give each community a phone number that is not just the opt-in, opt-out, but that is your customer service line. And when they call that customer service line, they get a person, which I think is a really big deal because they want an actual point of contact that they can talk to and ask questions of. You will still get calls. You'll get residents that will call and ask questions of you at the municipal office. The most common one I got was, is this a scam? We've gotten this letter, it's got the city letterhead on it. It's talking about this potential transition. Is this something that you guys are really doing, or do we need to be concerned? That was the bulk of my phone calls. And I didn't even get as many of those as I thought I potentially would. But the really great thing is that the municipality does not have to pay for this support. It comes at no cost to the municipality whatsoever. They get their reimbursement through the charges for the electricity, and it's folded into the supply contract. So they take a small percentage of whatever kilowatt hour agreement is made, and that is how they fund themselves. But the importance of this group cannot be overstated. They are your lifeline. They are what makes your program successful. So if you guys ultimately choose to move forward with CCA, you know, when you're sitting there and you're reviewing the RFPs and you're having those face-to-face interviews and you're communicating with them, ask them questions, like really push them to make sure that this is the group of people that you want to work with, because in a lot of ways, they're going to be your forward face representing this initiative for the community. So a timeline of how our process went. As I mentioned, we looked at this about a year before. We could not handle the workload in-house. So now, October 18, we find out about the third-party administrator. We were actually contacted by the group that ended up being our third-party administrator, saying, hey, we know this is something that you guys have done in the past. Did you know that we can do this for you now? Because we know that the administrative thing was one of your biggest concerns. So now it's like, oh, we don't have to pay you and you're going to run this process for us? Absolutely. Let's see what we can do. The best part about it is you can go all the way through the process up until you have bids in front of you, sign an agreement. And if you don't like any of them, you don't have to move forward. That would be kind of a bummer because it tends to be a little bit of a long process and you want to see some outcome, but there's no obligation once you start the process to actually complete it. And if at any time your community is not comfortable or you're not comfortable or you don't like how the process is going or you don't like the bids that you get, you can just walk away and there's no penalty, no anything at all. So once we knew that the third-party administrator was the option, we started talking generally about, would the community support this? Is this something they could get behind? Especially now that we know that we might be able to save them a little bit of money on their supply. What were some of the concerns that might get brought to the table? I got a whole bunch of them, everything from who do you think you are, to what they thought about my mom, to you were violating my constitutional rights by trying to help me pick an energy supplier. What we found, though, kind of interestingly, was that a lot of the community concerns seem to come from the same residents who are always concerned. It's the same resident or two that show up at every meeting. They're fired up about something on the agenda. In some cases, they don't even live in your community, and they're still there getting fired up. But trying to get ahead of that and identify what some of those concerns would be so that we could address them in our educational campaign was important. We also ran into a little bit of a piggybacking delay. You guys know with state contracts, there's a piggybacking provision, and there was a rather large aggregation with the two Pittsburghs, around McCoy and Penfield that we were interested in potentially hopping onto once we agreed to do CCA. We got to the point where we were ready to move forward, but the contract had been in Corporation Council for about 6 months and was nowhere near the light of day. So after kind of deciding whether or not we wanted to wait for that to play out, we ultimately decided to just go ahead and move out on our own. We ultimately ended up aggregating with the Village of Victor, and that has been a very successful process for us up until this point. November 2019, we passed legislation enabling the CCA program to be created in the city. So once you pass that enabling legislation, that's really the start of the process. And that's essentially saying, hey, we as the town of Canandaigua, we're looking at this, we're interested in this, and we're going to explore this. And then ultimately, if we decide to do this, we have the legislation in place to sign the contract and make sure that we can move forward. By the way, that contract would also come back to the board for approval based on the kilowatt hour pricing, just to make sure that everybody is happy with the agreement. That was the process that we had in the city as well. Also, once we passed that law, we really started informal community engagement. We started having our third-party administrator, who ended up being our third-party administrator, coming to public meetings and giving presentations. We started just kind of reaching out to different pockets of the community and asking what they thought, how they felt about it. February, we put out our formal RFP, and as you'll notice, the timelines on these are kind of interesting because in March 2020, things blew up a little bit for basically the entire world. But we selected Rocktricity as our third-party administrator, and I think we signed the contract a week before everything shut down. So, you know, here we are, we've got this really great outreach campaign that we want to do. We've got all these things that we're going to do, and now we can't meet with people. Now we can't be in public. Rocktricity was fantastic because within a week they had everything moved online, and they had created webinars and public forums and different strategies to engage the public. That was amazing. Like we didn't even ask them to do that, and a week after we shut down our office, I got an email saying, "Hey, we figured out how to move forward," which was amazing. So we've gone through at this point about 10 to 12 months of community engagement, community education. It's a variety of mailings. It was on Finger Lakes TV. It was in the newspaper. It was on every social media channel. It was the topic at a public meeting at least 8 times. So we're really trying to make sure that everybody in the community is aware and trying to reach all different sectors. As we got into the summer, though, the electric commodity hit an all-time low. It tanked in a way that it has never tanked before, to the point where it was a little over 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So now we're ready. We've got our bids. We're all excited. Nobody wants to sign any kind of agreement with us because it's going to tie them into that price for at least 2 or 3 years, right? So that was our August attempt. Nobody even wanted to talk to us. In September, we went back to market and we got back bids that looked more like a variable rate mortgage. It was really confusing. There were percentages and milestones and benchmarks and per kilowatt hour ratios, and that was just way too much. Like that's not what we're looking for. That's a headache for us to even try and consider. We're going to go back out. We're going to try again. In October, we got a great bid. And we were actually really happy about that price. Right now, all city residents until December 31st, 2022 are paying 0.4292 cents per kilowatt hour for their supply, which with delivery charges where they are right now, it's about 9 cents a kilowatt hour.
And that, do you know that's exact savings over what the majority of them would have had?
I'll actually show you. I've got my utility bills on a couple of slides, and you'll actually be able to see how it looks different, but also where the price savings is right now. January 1st, CCA went live, and everybody's stuff still works. Nobody had any interruptions in service. Nobody had any problems with the service delivery. Everybody's lights still on. Nobody would have known. And in fact, most people didn't realize that there was a changeover until they looked at their bill and saw that the supply was different and it actually saved a little bit of money. So I know the numbers on this are a little small, but you can see, you know, this is your standard page 1 of an RG&E bill where it's laying out your invoice, balance, whatever. And then you can see right down here, my electric supply chart is at the very bottom. So you can see in the month before we transitioned over to community choice aggregation, we were paying 0.5193 plus function charges. So it was really closer to like 5.7 a kilowatt hour for just the supply side. Now my new bill, I also put a geothermal system in, which is really saving me a ton of money on energy, which I'm really excited about, but that's a different conversation. what you see now is where the consolidated account summary is, you see Icon Energy. Icon Energy is the supplier that we actually supplied or chose as our supplier when we signed our community choice aggregation agreement. And the only difference in my bill is now I get an extra page on the back. And it's separate from the RG&E stuff, because I think Public Service Commission mandates that it has to be. But my supply charge is right there, the 0.429291 per kilowatt hour. Over the course of just this month, that was about a $10 savings on just this one bill. When I think about what that was over the summer with my air conditioner, for as hot as it was substantially, could have been substantially more per month. So I talked about this process like it was seamless. That would be a little misleading. You are going to face some challenges. Anything that you guys do as a community that's different, you're going to face some challenges. You're going to deal with some community pushback. But like I said, it came from only a handful of people. It was the people who were consistently pushing back on everything that we were doing, regardless of what it was. And I was waiting for my phone to ring off the hook. I was waiting for people to start coming to meeting in droves to talk about why we don't want to do this. This is a terrible idea. It just didn't happen. Like it just didn't happen. I get 1 or 2 or 3 calls from angry people wanting to opt out. I gave them the opt-out number. Within 15 seconds of the other person picking up the phone, they were out of the program. It's that simple. You can opt out online. You can opt out by a phone. You can opt out by a mail-in. You can also at any point in time decide to opt back in, and you're not committed either way. So, if for whatever reason that price for supply that we had in the city went way above what I could get through RG&E, I could just drop out, and then on my next billing cycle, I'd be back with RG&E. So, even within the program itself, your residents have a tremendous amount of freedom and a tremendous amount of flexibility to decide if they want to participate or not, and at what level, which I think is a really big plus. Misinformation is now the 5th horseman of the apocalypse, in my opinion. You have a lot of people who have PhDs in Google who can pull things from all corners of the internet, and some of it's really creative and interesting. But you deal with that, especially around clean energy stuff, especially after about 10 years ago, some of the behavior that we saw from ESCOs, which was kind of disgusting. So, you're already dealing with a certain level of mistrust. One common thing that you hear is that it impacts your delivery. It does not. It is the same delivery mechanism that everyone else is using. It is the same poles. It is the same meters. It's the same lines. You're just getting it from a different place. So it does not in any way, shape, or form impact your delivery.
And the bill still comes from RG&E.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it works kind of like the ESCOs.
A little bit, yeah. The difference is that with CCA, there's consumer protections built in, or with an ESCO, there's not. You also hear that CCA impacts the reliability of your service. So like your current won't be strong enough to power your appliances, or just randomly your lights will go off and you won't know what's going on. That is hilarious because again, we're all using the same delivery system. So if the power goes out for me as a CCA customer, it's going out for everybody, regardless of who their supplier is. So, I can assure you that all of my appliances function just fine on Dorset Street, and they function to the intended capacity that they're meant to. Another one that I hear that I get kind of frustrated by is that CCA doesn't have an impact. You'll hear things like, it's impossible to pull 100% renewable supply from the grid. Well, a grid in and of itself is designed to put things into pockets. So then you just decide which pockets of the grid you want to pull energy from. So it's 100% possible to pull 100% renewable from the grid. You also hear that it doesn't really change things. And that's the one that I really have an issue with. When you have an entire community or entire region, communities together, all eliminating fossil fuels from how they heat or power their homes, and in some cases heat and cool their homes, the air quality impact, the water quality impact is real, because we know, and we've known since the Industrial Revolution, that burning fossil fuels is not great for the planet. So anything that we can do to not do that is going to benefit everyone in the long run. You'll also hear that you'll end up paying more. You might, and again, CCA is not an item for every community. If your community is not concerned about clean energy, or your community is not concerned about reducing the impact of municipal operations or reducing the cost of municipal operations, then I wouldn't pursue this. If you're happy with brown energy, and you're happy staying at a price that fluctuates constantly, then that's your comfort zone, and I'm not gonna try and dissuade you from that. But as we're seeing now, with the commodity coming off an all-time historic low, and the add-on of the ability to do community solar as an opt-out with community choice aggregation, we're seeing the ability to guarantee savings for residents, especially because the community solar component comes with a 9 to 11% savings built in. So even if that rate were to drop a little bit and I was paying a little bit more, that offset from the community solar component would still allow me to realize savings on my energy costs. You also experience what feels like a general apathy or lack of engagement. Why aren't people concerned? Why aren't people contacting us? Why don't people want to engage on this? What we found after the fact was that general apathy and lack of engagement was actually community support. People did read their mail. They did know this was coming. They had been paying attention, and we weren't hearing anything from them because they either completely bought in or they trusted what the city was doing and figured, we've elected these people and they've put people into positions to do this work. We trust them. Worst case scenario, we don't like it, we opt out and we go back to our genie, no skin off our backs. But we actually found after the fact that our residents were well aware, they were well prepared for the most part, except for the ones that didn't want to pay attention. And this is one that is important to kind of talk about, is you're not going to be able to reach everyone in the community. It's not possible. We had a 15-month engagement process, which included at least 8 mailings from Jewel Rocktricity in the city. As I mentioned, it was a public meeting topic at least 8 times. It was on FLTV. It was all over the place for 15 months that this is where the city was going and what we were going to do. January 5th, my first day back from Christmas break, I was getting phone calls from people. Who the hell do you think you are? I felt pretty good at that point to say, hey man, like, we tried really hard to reach you. We tried for 15 months through everything that we could possibly think of, with the exception of going door to door. And if you missed it, I'm sorry, but we did this completely above board. If we were trying to do something sneaky, we wouldn't have tried for 15 months to get contact with you. So you will still get that from people who just completely missed the boat. But at the same time, you can't force people to open their mail. And even if you're not watching Facebook, you're not watching FLTV, we all get mail. I open the ones that look like junk mail just to make sure they're not junk. This would have been one of those times where those residents in the community might have done that and been better prepared for the change that was coming. So key takeaways from my experience in helping to implement this, the importance of a third-party administrator cannot be overstated. They are a critical partner and really make this process pretty seamless for the municipality itself. They are an active partner with you, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting that initially dissuaded the city of Canandaigua from moving forward in the first place. So, when you're meeting with them, when you're making that decision, if you decide to move forward, be very meticulous in how you make that choice, because you want to make sure that whoever's promoting this for you in the community is giving the right message that's representative of you guys. The importance of the public engagement process also cannot be understated. Public Service Commission, I think, only mandates a 60 to 90 day public engagement responsibility before implementing this. I think if you want any success of a program like this in your community, you need to do more, and you need to push a little bit harder to try and find ways to reach your residents. Part of the reason that our process took so long was because our city council wanted to be very meticulous and make sure that we had done everything that we could to turn over every stone to make sure that we tried to reach everybody. And at the end of the day, I think that the city did a great job, and Rocktricity did a great job, especially during the pandemic, of creating awesome opportunities for community feedback. Radio silence isn't a bad thing. As I said, you'll find that most people in your community are really happy. They're happy where they are. They're happy paying taxes for the services that you guys provide. You very rarely get people coming to meetings talking about how thrilled they are with the level of municipal service that they're receiving. But you will always get people that will come and complain about something, no matter how big or how small. So as we kind of transition into radio silence into the next one, is don't let that minimal pushback or misinformation impede what you're trying to do. I can tell you that of all of the interactions that I had in this process with almost 11,000 residents, I think maybe 24 of them 25 of them weren't good. And I had the vast majority of the residents that I interacted with just wanted to make sure that this is what we were doing, and then this wasn't a junk mail. So it in a way gave me another opportunity to engage a resident to kind of let them know why the city was doing what they were doing, and build another relationship based on, you know, educating them for why the city was doing what they were doing. And then the impact is real. We have an entire 4 square mile area right now, right next door, that is not using fossil fuels for electricity. The town and city of Geneva are on Cca agreements. The city of Rochester just signed a Cca agreement a couple months ago. They're the largest agreement in New York State. Lima, Rockport, Victor, Brighton, Penfield, lots of communities are starting to do this, not just because of, you know, the perceived environmental benefit, but because they're finding that it really is saving money, not just for the residents, but also for them and how they're doing business, and how they're providing energy to power their municipal operations. And then we've also, I added this slide about the Climate Smart Communities Task Force.
Can you back up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give a chance.
Sorry.
for Questions on
Absolutely.
that other.
Sure. Yeah, I did just spill out the information that you guys have.
Yeah.
What questions do you guys have?
And I think you guys probably know this too, but when the city first started looking at this, Doug and John were in meetings with, was it Rochester together?
I was in on those meetings.
Yeah, so the idea isn't new, but for the same reasons, the city first didn't like it, it was kind of like a pass, you know, it's too much work and stuff like that, but Doug had encouraged Rob to come because we re-met with him a month or two ago, talked about it again, so. Can you also touch on the piggyback options?
Yeah, so it's interesting that,
Explain what it is.
so if your supply contract that you ultimately agree to has the piggybacking clause in it, it will allow other municipalities to hop onto that contract at the same per kilowatt hour rate that you guys are experiencing. I went back and I looked at the city's contract. Because of where we were in the market, we didn't have that piggybacking clause, and it jogged my memory that they wouldn't give us that rate in that contract if we included it, because they were concerned about the exposure over a 2-year period. What's interesting right now is there's several communities in and around Canandaigua Lake that have either recently passed that enabling legislation to start looking at it, or are in active discussion with Rochester. Richmond, Bristol, Naples. So there's a potential for there to be a really nice group of communities in and around the Finger Lakes that you guys could assemble to boost your numbers. And then kind of just looking at the timing of it, the CCA contract for the city expires at the end of 2022. So, you know, if you guys go through an engagement process and we get to the end there might be the opportunity for the city and the town to aggregate together, which would be a much larger aggregation, which would
More buying power.
So this is one that actually I would say over the last 2 months has really, the interest has started to pick up from a lot of different communities, including some really small ones, which I was really surprised and happy to find out they were looking at it. I think the town of Richmond has 600 people, but they passed enabling legislation and they are actively pursuing it. I met with the town of Bristol last Monday, and I'm coming back on the 13th to talk about CCA with them and how they could potentially move forward in that process. So if the town was interested in this, now would kind of be a good time to look at it, because there's a whole bunch of communities right now that are really starting to move forward with this, and it would increase potentially your negotiating power and the price that you, or reduce the price you can get on your electric.
So what's the downside in all this?
You know, I would say the downside came prior to the third-party administrator. In order to achieve what you needed to achieve in this program, there was a ton of work that needed to be done by municipalities with really short staffs. I also think that the potential downside of this could be, you know, as I stated, electric tanks again, and just drops into the toilet. However, we do know that if we're talking about other potential sources for energy, we know coal is going to go up. Natural gas is already starting to rise as we go into the colder months. So, you know, that's really, as far as I can see it, is the only risk that you have, is that price that you negotiate, that fixed price for the 2, 3, or year period, is that electric might drop below that. If that ever happened, any resident who didn't want to remain on that program could make a phone call, they could opt out. And within their next, and by the time their next billing cycle started, they would be back on our GE supply. So even the risk of that arbitrage going in favor of the power company, any resident at any time can pick up the phone and no longer continue.
And
So
then
it's
if
a
it
long-
changes again, they could get back in.
Correct.
I wonder if there's limits on that,
There's not.
so they can hop around.
If they wanted to switch every month, they could switch every month. I wouldn't really recommend that because it's kind of confusing, but you know, there's no limits in this program for what resident participation can be. I can tell you that the retention rate that the city of Canandaigua had was really high. It was like 95 or 96% of our residents remained in CCA. And I think a large part of that had to do with the effort that went into trying to make sure that everybody was right.
You allow commercial businesses to participate in this.
Yes, actually.
Um,
Would a municipality be able to? What would a municipal?
So that is something that's actually in the works. There is a component of my program called 100% renewable energy, which is geared towards helping municipalities essentially accomplish the same thing that you can in a CCA agreement. I don't believe that they can sign on directly, but I can verify that to be sure. The city of Canandaigua draws most of their power supply from the solar array. I think 94% of our municipal load comes from that. So,
Oh, yeah, the power your
yeah,
sewer plant.
yeah. So our arrangement with that was a little bit different, but I do know that any of the businesses within your community could participate in community choice aggregation. And I can go home and make a phone call and find out if you guys could as well.
About
Cause we get bills from RG.
Because you get those from RG as well, exactly.
agriculturally, like a
Yeah.
large built facility.
Is everybody within town limits automatically opted in, whether they're a business or a farm or a resident?
Correct. So once you start that engagement process and you start talking to the community about it, that's when you'll start to hear people say, you know, like they're either excited about it or they don't want to participate. You can actually start the opt-in, opt-out process right then. And if you have a resident call you, even at the beginning, like, I want to do this, you give them the number for Rotricity and Rotricity opts them out when it goes
So
live.
they can opt out before it even
Mhm.
starts.
Yeah.
But the automatic opt-in is part of where you get the better rate. Is
Correct.
that why
So.
you're more likely to get a better rate?
And there's actually a reason for that. These programs used to be opt-in until the Public Service Commission realized that there was a lot of benefit for just having people be part of it and then opt out if they chose not to. So that's why the community solar went from an opt-in to an opt-out. It was to put it in line with CCA because they found that in the early attempts at this program down in Westchester County, if you went the other way, it was much harder to get people to sign up and the acquisition was much more difficult. The education process was a lot more difficult. So if you had the entire community moving in that direction, it's kind of easier to pull people out that don't want to be part of it than it is to try and get the community together and decide who wants to be part of it.
What do we see happening in the future of this program? Because, you know, there's a limited amount of renewable energy in the grid right now. So you're selling all this renewable energy, which is a limited resource right now. So
So
what do we see in the future here?
I would not be worried about supply for CCA at all. Where I would be a little bit more concerned is the opt-out community solar. The opt-out community solar is really picking up steam, and we're running into situations where, you know, those established solar arrays or grids where you can pull that energy from is starting to become scarce. With the overall CCA program, with the hydro and the nuclear, I don't see there being any concern about meeting supply at all. The only reason that I can say that is because I've asked this question to a couple of people, and that's the answer that I've gotten. Is the traditional CCA is not in any way, shape, or form impacted by that, but the community solar is until we can bring the grid up to where we can handle the capacity for more of those systems.
So you're lumping anything that's not fossil fuel into the 100%, like nuclear.
Yep.
As long as it falls on a renewable.
And that's where the increase in these solar arrays is helping in a lot of cases, because like Livingston County is putting in hundreds of acres of solar arrays for community solar programs right now. most of which are gonna benefit communities within that county itself. So any additional production that isn't being utilized by that community then goes back into the grid, it can be sold back to the grid to potentially create another economic opportunity for that municipality. So there's a lot of ways this can work and it can go. The other thing too is if you guys sign a CCA agreement and you go through a period process of 2 or 3 years, you get to the end of the contract, and you don't want to do it again, you just don't do it again. And that's another great thing about this program is you're not locked into participation forever and a day moving forward. If you just sign a 1 or 2 year or 3 year agreement, you don't particularly see value, you're not particularly experiencing the savings that you hope for, then when that contract expires, everyone just rolls back into traditional supply. So they wouldn't.
Does it happen seamlessly?
The 9 to 11% is built in, the guarantee. Yeah, maybe 11% of what? You know,
The
the supply.
supply.
So that's automatic.
Take care, drive safe.
Correct.
Thank you.
Go back to what was the total, those bills that you showed? Total before and after.
Sure. So before, you can see my supply charge was the base 0.05193. And then I had, oh, sorry. And then I had about another 0.0045 added on to that. So we're looking at about 5.7 cents ish for the supply side prior to switching. And then when we switched over, this is actually, these bills are back-to-back months. You can see that my supply cost is not only like more simple, it's just one number. That is the number that's gonna stay there until the end of 2022.
What was the difference in the two?
It's about
It was about 2 cents.
2 cents per kilowatt hour.
No, dollars.
Oh, dollars.
Oh, dollars. Had I stayed on my prior electric rate for this month's bill, it would have been about $15 more.
50,
15.
15. So you save $15 a month.
In this particular month.
Yeah, well, that,
Yeah, but I mean, if we had switched sooner and we had done it prior to the start of the summer, I think that I would have been saving a lot more, because if we go back to previous slide, like this was at the RG&E rate while we were running AC in the summer months. So if I had a cheaper per kilowatt hour at that point, that probably would have been, you know, maybe a $90 bill as opposed to a $150 bill.
I see Penfield Green's rate, they're starting the program first of the year. It's 5.73 cents per kilowatt.
And they actually signed a not 100% renewable supply. So they signed on to a mixed supply.
Yeah, they have 50%, 100%, 6.44.
Yep. So.
So that's almost equivalent to what your old rate was.
Correct. And that's the thing, it's a commodity, it's a fluctuating commodity. But everything right now is trending up. The other thing too is that they negotiated that, I think 3 or 4 months ago. So even since that point when they signed that contract, which I actually, if I'm being completely honest with you, I thought they could have gotten better numbers.
Who's their third party?
This meeting is
Good
being
Energy?
recorded.
How many third party options are there?
So there's about 4 or 5 in New York State.
That would be a concern, I guess.
Yep.
If they went away and then you're left with one person, either you're gonna go with that person or you're not, but is Good Energy, is that one of their?
So that is Good Energy is one of the potential third-party administrators that you can choose.
That's who Penfield's used.
That's who Penfield used. I know that when I was talking to them about CCA, I think they ultimately went with Good Energy because they give them the option to offer a mixed product. If you were to go with Rocktricity is only interested in doing 100% renewable. So that may have been why they went that way. There's also other third-party administrators right now in the Public Service Commission approval process that may become options in the next couple of months once they receive all of their credentials. The third-party administrator that we have in our region that's kind of local here, which is Jewel and Rocktricity, is one that's been really popular, partly because of the fact that there is a more localized presence.
Sounds like they give you more options.
So, you know, we had a great experience with them. I've heard really great feedback. But that's not to say that the experience that you could get with another third-party administrator wouldn't be equally as positive. I know that the city ultimately chose to go with Rocktricity because of the fact that they were here. And they were in Monroe County. We could call somebody and get a person on the phone right away without prompts or menu. And we like the fact that they were so close that if we ever needed them to come speak, they could have somebody at a meeting that night.
So what's the first action we should take if we want to maybe move forward?
Sure, so the first action you want to take is you want to pass that enabling legislation. That is the first step that actually officially starts the process saying, hey, we as a community want to start looking at this and we enable the program to exist in our community should we choose to move forward.
So if we wanted to say, present this to our board,
That'd be the
What
first
is-
step.
what is your function of possibly coming and giving a condensed version?
Just
Whatever.
some work.
Whatever you guys need.
We have a section in our amendment work. Up front in our agenda. We have a presentation.
Sure.
Condensed or
Yeah, I can do that for sure.
Yeah.
And so
Similar presentation.
in my role as clean energy community coordinator now, my goal is to help any of the municipalities that want to pursue this stuff, pursue it. So I've actually kind of been doing a roadshow this week. I've been at various corners of our 9-county region, helping promote this in various fashions. So anything that you guys need for support, we are happy to help at Genesee Finger Lakes. My partner Jenny on this project is also phenomenal to work with. So whatever support you guys needed from us, it would just really be letting us know that, and we can help move forward. We have, for third-party administrator, for example, we have template RFPs that you guys could look at and build from, so you weren't starting from scratch. We have templated contracts that you could look at to get an idea of what, the process looks like from the business end. So there's a lot of different tools and resources that we can help with. It's just a matter of knowing how we can best support you guys.
Rob, I'm on the planning
So I was just gonna
Yeah.
ask you, what's your feeling? Would you say it might be
I don't know what
something
we
to
have
wait till after?
scheduled now.
There might be 2 presentations for November.
Lengthy?
Huh?
Lengthy.
I think perhaps maybe an update from the LDC and then, one of the project teams.
What's the date in November?
15th, week from Monday. Week from next Monday.
Can we react that fast
6
in a
o'clock.
good fashion? We want to put our best foot forward if we put it out there. So.
Agreed.
Terry, is this something you want to bring to the board? Is
Yeah.
this something that you're interested in?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's.
So next Monday, I have code enforcement training until 5:30 in Medfield.
What's that?
On
So-
the 15th.
on the 15th,
Maybe just.
but I could, would that meeting be the 13th?
Maybe the December meeting would be better.
December meeting, it's the third Monday.
Okay, so it wouldn't be the 13th.
20th, is it?
If it's the 20th, I can absolutely do that. If
Of
it's the
December.
if it's the 13th, then I'm at Bristol's town board.
Monday, whatever it is.
Yeah, we're not the same day as Bristol. Yeah, we're December 20th.
Yeah, I could do that for sure.
I think that
Do it then.
I think,
Maybe you
we would
could-
want to get a good condensed presentation, so we would.
Yeah.
And you could kind of mention that we've met
Yeah.
with Rob
Oh, I
when
will.
discussing.
When I give my report.
Yeah, when you give your report.
And I can
Give
also
them a
work with
little
Caitlin
prep.
to make sure that the report or the presentation is condensed in the right way so that we're getting the bulk of the information in the shorter amount of time.
And I can check in with you, Terry, if there's any specific questions that the board has or things that they specifically want to see, we can make sure that we communicate that with Rob before.
Yeah, I agree with that. So just take a little time to get it right.
Hey,
I'll put that on my calendar right now.
my question, Rob, was, I'm on the planning board and we have 3 going on 4 community solar projects in the town. One thing we're hearing is one of the residents is gonna see the benefit of what is coming, we're seeing these farms, the panels are going up. And would it be fair to say that possibly those projects would be part of a program that you're support, that we're talking about here today, that the way they would see a reduction in their electricity would be through a CCA program? And CA,
CCA. you're correct.
CCA, I
Yeah,
had it
yeah.
right first time.
Community
Through a CCA program that they would realize a savings, and that's how the more of these programs we have, you see end
Yeah.
results in terms of savings.
And
It's
I
a justification.
and I think that goes back to the point that you made earlier is, you know, some of the concerns about supply. The more of these solar arrays that go up, the more that we're working to address those concerns. And those projects may, believe it or not, already be spoken for in terms of the capacity that
Yeah, I have no idea.
they can generate.
Tied to, yeah.
I have one community that I'm working with right now that wants to do community solar for their municipal operations, but they need to wait 6 months for another contract that's part of the solar array that they're joining to expire. So the more of those solar arrays that go up, that will definitely help both with the renewable energy supply and it should help with the cost,
Yeah.
because the more of that energy that's available, the cheaper it should be.
It's really an accounting thing, because nobody can tell me an electron goes into the wire, where that electron lights up your house, my house is where.
Yeah.
It's an accounting thing. It's just, we produce X number of megawatts or whatever. Fossil fuel does this, nuclear, all those added together, that this percentage is, I mean, it's just allocation.
Yeah.
It's
I
not.
don't think
that
the
array
residents
is
care
power,
where,
unless you have your own.
where
you're
the
off
power
grid.
goes.
Right.
All they care about is the savings.
Exactly, and that's
That's,
that
That's
was
really what it
that's a
boils
driver.
down to.
And
Because the
that's-
applicants get up and say you're gonna save money, and we've heard it from
Yeah.
four times now, and nobody's seen the savings yet, so
I
this would be
was-
an opportunity to prove that.
I would say from a town perspective, even if it became equal, we're ahead because we're reducing the
Fossil fuel.
well, and another component to kind of consider, in addition to CCA itself, is the impact that it would have on other town initiatives and town programs that you guys are doing. And for example, the CEC program that I oversee, this is our highest point total item by far. And by implementing this, you would be positioning yourselves to access more grant money because you're accomplishing more within our program. So, you know, it's not just good in terms of what it might do for the community, but there's also potential benefit for what it might do for municipal operations, because all the money in my program is match free. So, you know, if you get a grant from CEC, you don't have to worry about a 25 or 50% match. That money is yours to spend.
Which we're already part of that program. I don't know if
Yes.
You guys know, but we've already gotten our first grant with the program across, $5,000. But things like this definitely do help us get closer to some of those bigger monies.
And as we're, you know, maybe also kind of thinking about climate smart communities too. Every item in my program directly correlates to climate smart communities. So anything that you would do in mine, you're also accomplishing something in that adjacent program as well. In that program, if you get a designation, unlocks a different level of CFA funding as a designated CSC community. So it's not just necessarily about the immediate savings, because they could be there for sure. But, you know, by moving forward with some of these programs, it's also going to do more for the services that you guys can provide as a municipality.
One quick question, and then let's start chatting a little bit more about climate smart communities.
Sure.
Terry, when Rob comes to do the presentation at the December board meeting, do we want to have a resolution on the agenda about a local law, or do you want to have him present in December and then maybe a
Wait till
resolution?
January, because the board's changing. in the year.
Give
Yeah.
the new board
Give the new board
a
members.
chance to make a
Okay.
decision. Yeah.
I'm sure the members will be there, but
Yeah. I would hope so.
it'd be better to do that.
Okay, sounds good. So let's chat a little bit more about climate smart communities.
Can we check with her? I mean, that's
Yes,
Yeah,
I can go quick.
something you gotta go through.
So one of the things that we've kind of talked about is using the progress that you guys have already made in the CEC program and applying it to the Climate Smart Communities program. In order to get a Climate Smart certification, you need to get 120 points. The first third of that is agreeing to be a Climate Smart community participant and establishing a Climate Smart task force. So this kind of came about because I know a lot of the other work that the town has done doesn't necessarily apply to my program, but it applies to the CSC program. So the task force really is, it's a group of leadership that promotes some of the things that you guys might want to do in either program. It's usually made up of residents, elected officials, It's good to have somebody from staff on it that can kind of speak to the municipality's resources and what they kind of can't do. But essentially, this is a group that meets every so often to talk about any projects that you guys might want to do and how that task force can help support those moving forward. So for an example, the group that actually became the CSC task force in the city of Canandaigua was the group that did our residential composting campaign. So we were able to bring in a bunch of community members that were already invested, already engaged, and add them to this board. We also had a couple of our elected officials on there. Ellen sat on it, and Karen White sat on it as our environmental committee chair. We had me as the climate smart coordinator who kind of oversaw the initiative and acted as a liaison between staff and this group. The only thing that's really required of this group is that you meet a couple times before you submit your application. And how you guys wanted to structure this task force is really up to you. How you guys want to build it out in terms of membership, how you guys want to assign tasks, how you guys want to do any of that stuff. There's really no restrictions other than the fact that you guys have to have an established designated group that meets to discuss how to move some of the stuff forward. I would recommend having as many residents on it as possible, in particular residents who may or may not have some kind of knowledge about like electric vehicles or work in the environmental sector. Anybody that you can pull with a good knowledge base to join would be good. But really it's a group of people that helps the municipality look at any of the initiatives that they want to do. And they support them through community events, they table. I did an annual report every year. We helped them put some things in place for how businesses on Main Street would run in terms of like level of recycled materials and stuff like that. So, how you'd want to utilize this group would really be based on what things you wanted to do in the Climate Smart program. But the group itself has a tremendous amount of flexibility in how you create it, how you designate it, and then how you guys work as a team.
What are some specific initiatives came out?
So one of the things that we did as a Climate Smart Communities, we held a big Earth Day event in 2019 at the library. We pulled in about 70 community members. There was about 20 different organizations there tabling, talking about, you came to that, you were there, you were part of that. We had a green vendor fair scheduled for the last weekend in March of last year, which unfortunately we did not get to have because of COVID. So a lot of this group really is community education and helping to create opportunities to engage with the community, to help them learn more about what the municipality is doing on this front. We also did a couple webinars of different educational content. We had a social media page that we posted to regularly to engage the community and help educate them on various things. The task force itself really kind of defines itself and how they want to function. What we did was we had like a guy that was really good with technology. So he did our website and he updated our Facebook page. We had a woman that was like my co-chair who was great with graphic design. So she did a lot of our materials in terms of flyers and web design stuff. We had another guy who was really big into electric vehicles. So, he was a huge driver in helping us create different events and opportunities around EV offerings in the community. But you can also not do that. I mean, one of the coolest things that we did was we put a kid from the academy on the Climate Smart Task Force, which was awesome. Because he actually wrote me a letter saying, I would like to be part of this. Is there any way that I can come to meetings? And we had an open seat for somebody that had moved. So we added him to the board, and now it's helped to build out some of that relationship with the school district. But this group is really cool because it helps push things forward, but how it does that and in what capacity is really up to the community.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the resolution as well?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, if we want to try to do this sooner rather than later, but when I was looking, so let me back up a little bit. The Climate Smart Communities certification, you have to have 120 points to meet bronze.
Correct.
Caitlin and Doug and I went through this list with Rob. We think we're close to that already.
I think you might already have it.
And by things we've already done, a lot of it is what Caitlin's done with the transfer station and the outreach, the composting and all that stuff, and going to these fairs and stuff. And if we can get that certification, then we get more points on applications through the consolidated funding application state that they have, what is it, every July or something like that. To do things like street light conversion, so and stuff like that. So we think it's a good idea, and to try and go for the certification, but like Rob said, there's a couple things we have to do. We have to have that task force to decide what it is, who's it gonna be, and we have to have a coordinator person. My initial thought was, and we've already talked about this, is that because a lot of these things, her name kept coming up when I would look at this list, I'm like, hey, Caitlin knows that, oh, she did that already, oh, we've done that. Is it maybe Caitlin potentially serve as our coordinator? My knee-jerk idea after that, and I'm interested to see what you think, is that could this committee serve as the task force? But hearing you talk about more community involvement, would that be, cutting us off by deciding that already, when maybe there would be community members that would want to be? I don't know.
Could what be the task? What was that?
This
committee,
It's gotta be,
I think
gotta
it's
be much
somewhat
bigger
limited.
than that.
That's
Yeah.
what I was starting to wonder. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of the ideas you guys talk about already anyway, so that was why I initially thought that,
Mhm.
but
We had, ours was 12.
Yeah,
I'm concerned we would not be able to get 12 people on it.
That's
No.
okay, that's okay. And that's,
We have
and
a really hard time.
so
getting
part of,
well, part of it, because we have so many communities already.
we do, and that was the
People
other
that
thing,
volunteer.
Right.
and I was trying to think of, well, what committees do we already have that could
CB.
possibly fill this role? I thought that too, Doug wasn't sure that would work.
Well, yeah, I mean, I say that just as a,
'Cause that's what I first said
and
too.
and part of the reason
There
why
are
our number
options,
was so
yeah.
high was because we were really working with an existing group. So, we didn't wanna exclude anybody who had been really critical to that composting initiative. And we wanted to give everybody who was part of that composting initiative the opportunity to be on CSC. Full disclosure, we found that some of that might not have been the best path, and we maybe should have been a little bit more, I don't wanna say stringent because that's not the right word, but we found varying levels of participation once we moved in this direction away from composting. So, it would be a good idea, no matter how many people you guys have on it, to make sure that the people who are gonna be on it are gonna be engaged, and they're gonna wanna help do the work. Otherwise, you're gonna find yourself in a situation, by the way, I think that's a phenomenal selection to be the coordinator. I think that's fantastic. You might find that you're doing a little bit more of the work than you'd like to, or you have the capacity to do. So that would just be another thing that I would think about is anything or anyone that you guys want to put on this board, it should probably be somebody that's going to be engaged and really want to help participate. I don't think I would have had any success in this program if I hadn't had really good people to work with. And I did, I was very lucky.
I think it's a good thing to put on agenda next month again, I think it's something to think about. We do have
well, it is.
groups within the town already that lend themselves to supporting this.
Well, I wonder about the
think about
ECB still, that you were the coordinator. I mean, it's not what you said, Rob, it's meeting quarterly or something like that. ECB doesn't have this exact charter, but it certainly overlaps quite a
Yeah,
bit,
oh, yeah.
quite an
No
intersection
doubt
there.
about
And
But
even,
maybe, you being part of the ECB as that coordinator, that quarterly, they could do something like, I'm just thinking, the reality of trying to get a bunch of people together.
Yeah.
I mean, we got some openings now in some of our, we got one on the planning board, end of the year,
And we-
probably two.
and we tried to meet monthly for an hour a month, and I think that
you know,
that was maybe too frequent, because we would have meetings where, maybe something hadn't gotten pushed far enough along, or because it was so frequent, people would often have
So
conflicts.
you met quarterly, I guess I didn't catch that.
No, we met monthly.
Oh, you did.
We met
Initially.
monthly. No, for the entire thing.
Oh, really?
So what I'm hearing is that if you guys did want to meet quarterly, because it would maybe be less of a time commitment for your group, that's also okay. Again, it's not about what even is in the language of the CSC, it's about what's gonna work for you guys so that you can be successful. And that's also my role, is to meet you guys where you are and to help you find that path forward to success, whatever that looks like. So you guys have, and that's the other thing that's cool about this, is you guys have full control over how you want to structure this task force and initiative. There's no requirements for people that have to be on it. The one thing to consider though, is that if you have more than I think 2 or 3 elected officials on it, then it becomes a public meeting. And then you have to start advertising at like a board or a committee meeting, which is something that we didn't do because we only had 2.
No, I think you want to avoid
I would think you want to avoid that too. Our meetings were always open to the public. We met at the library,
all of our communities.
but I would,
Actually, they're all advertised.
yeah. But you know, it's a different level of headache when you kind of have to start approaching it as a normal committee meeting as opposed to just an environmental group or a group of citizens.
I can almost see this as really kind of like a side branch of ECB. Maybe one of the things, if we put that on our agenda next month, is get the head of the ECB and him, and let's, you
And
know,
that's-
bat it around.
That's what the city did. It was a subcommittee of our environmental committee.
Yeah. Yeah, our
There is
current,
no chairman.
Oh, there isn't one? What
Nobody
happened?
wants it.
Well, nobody wants it. Well, that's not a good.
our supervisor-elect is currently sitting as the leader of the ECB, but yeah, he's not officially the chair.
Oh, well, that's not a good harbinger of putting it there.
Well, and I
Well-
don't know, I did send a link out for this, I don't know if you guys really got a chance to look into these. I know it sounds immediately like the ECB is a good match, and they may be, but a lot of these really overlap with this committee. They're about street lighting, they're about HVAC,
Land
they're
and water use.
land and water, you know, a lot of
Electric
these,
vehicles.
a lot of them are about the transfer station. And if we do move forward with planning for a new transfer station, a lot of it would really, we could keep some of these goals in mind. So I think a lot of them do overlap really well with this.
So
this
that
committee.
document you're looking at is,
It's the list of, points items, so things that the community can do, or if we've done them, say we did them, to get to those points in order to become a certified climate smart community, which is then what opens the doors for funding.
well, if we put this on our agenda for next month, why don't you send us a copy of that so we can think.
So if you click on the link, I think it's easier to look at it online. I can certainly send you
Yeah, I mean,
a
you send us the link.
hard
Yeah,
copy.
that'd be
She
fine.
did.
I did,
Oh, you already did?
that's okay.
Oh, you might as well go home. She's already got it taken care of.
If you pull it up here on the website, you can really kind of dive into these. So like I've been looking a lot at the materials management. So
Okay.
you can click on it and there's a ton of really great information on here. It says, why is it important? How to implement it?
What do you need to submit?
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
what
the
you
one I
need
look
to
at.
submit.
That's where I
Me too.
jump
It's really
immediately.
helpful. So each of these, 1 through however many, kind of categories has more action items under, and you can really.
And we've already got 4 done. Approved, I think.
Well,
So-
through my program, you guys have more in this program than you've done in my program.
So
I know.
Sarah and I
Yeah.
have been going
I
through
got-
these
I'm already-
items and getting together, some of them, like, one of them is, a natural resource inventory, we've already
Which
done.
is done, and I already.
So
uploaded
Sarah
it.
and I are working on getting the things that we've already done together and entered into here.
In my experience and having done this, I think you guys are there. I think you guys have a certification. It's just a matter of putting all the
Putting it together.
documentation and submitting it.
Yeah, but
And
then
there's,
you gotta do all the work required to put the committee together and stuff.
I know, but the funny thing is, I think that's our hardest part.
Which is
Finding
interesting,
the
'cause-
committee,
because
we've
for
already
most-
done a lot of
For
these
most people,
already.
that's the easiest part, is you like passing the resolution and putting the committee together.
Mhm.
But I also think that you guys are in a really good position because you've already done a lot of this work. So it's more putting together a body of work and the resume that you've already done than having to do new projects to get to a certification level.
No, yeah, and so there's different levels, there's 3 levels of certification. Obviously, in the beginning, we're shooting for the lowest hanging fruit, which is the bronze, but you have to resubmit every 5 years. Caitlin and I are already talking about how we can get to silver. If the board wants to go for this, how we could get to silver the next time around,
There's only 5 silver communities in New York State too.
you know.
Well, what do you think, Terry? To be continued?
If you guys have any questions
I
moving
got it.
forward, let me know. I'm happy to help. I know we've run over a
Thank you.
little bit, but.
Yeah, thank you very much for your
Absolutely.
input.
But
And one more time, the advantage of having the certification,
So it opens up
other than sort of
available
fuzzy-
more funding. How do I say it? Makes us more likely to get funding when we apply for
more
it.
likely.
So
Yeah.
there's an entire line of consolidated funding
Things we want
specifically
anyway.
for CSC.
From the state.
Correct. If you are a designated community,
Mhm.
you get a bunch more points added to your application total. The other thing about that funding that is important to know is they want to give it to communities that are already moving forward. So if you submit a grant to them, showing them, we're gonna use it to do this, and then this is how it's gonna help us build on that,
This is what we've done.
they're gonna give you the money.
And it's for stuff that we've already started looking into for years now too. Things like we're already doing, but more of the same, like electric vehicles, we're changing out LED lights.
Charging
like,
solution.
Charging
You know,
stations, exactly.
Yeah, doing a charging
LED
station.
streetlights.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
So it's another pool of money that you guys have much greater access to and much greater likelihood of getting awarded. The other thing to think about too is, you know, with my generation and like us younger folks, I bought a house in this area because of how you guys treat the area that we live in. It's beautiful and everybody cares about it and everybody respects it and wants to protect it. And I've got a little girl that I want to be able to swim in Canandaigua Lake and to grow up in a beautiful community where it's clean and she can breathe the air. So a lot of folks in my age range are really starting to take that into account when they're looking where they want to move and where they want to settle their families. And being able to tell a young generation that is a lot more climate conscious, hey, not only do we have a clean energy community, we are a climate smart community. And these are all the things that we do to keep our community beautiful. It's going to carry some weight. It's going to carry some resonance.
So
So
the thing is, if we're gonna move forward with that, we gotta have a structure that's gonna work. I don't like hollow programs.
neither do I.
You don't really do anything.
I agree. No, I'm not one to spin my wheels. I like to get things done and push things forward. So that's why I like working with Caitlin, because we're both very like-minded in that.
I get impatient too. So I
yeah.
already have all this. I want to turn it in, but we're not allowed yet.
Yeah, it's January. So, but I mean, that's another area where I can help too, is with this program. I've walked a community through it from start to finish, and I know how to finesse things when this is submitted. The other thing that's great about this program too is that you know, with my program, the documentation is cut and dry. You either have it or you don't, and it qualifies or it doesn't. With CSC, you can make a case for something that you think should be included somewhere, even if it's not clear. And if you can make a good argument, the chances of you getting credit for it are pretty good. Even if it's just partial credit, they'll recognize that, hey, we kind of see what you're talking about here. It's not totally the full item, but here's half the points for it.
Who is it that makes these decisions?
The Department of Environmental Conservation runs that program.
But it works well with the.
With my
So
program,
confusing
there's so many
acronyms,
acronyms,
I know.
yes.
The Clean Energy Communities, which is through NYSERDA, and then the CSC, which is the one we're talking about today, is through DEC, but they share points back and forth. I asked Rob, I said, why can't we just have one program? But they build each other up.
Yeah.
And in the end,
And everything that you do in my program directly applies to that. So anything that you accomplish through CEC, you accomplish in CSC at the same time.
yeah, and with both programs, the more we do with these programs, the more funding opens up to us.
And you can also use the same item for multiple submissions, if it applies to different parts.
Does
of the
anything
application.
that the private sector does in your town get credited to you, such as if Morel builds homes that are the greenhouses and I'm thinking the Creek View, the apartments, they were, in fact, they got a certification for it. Does that count as points at all toward the community program, or is that
I think it's specifically.
they're doing their own thing?
I think it's specifically geared toward municipal action, where something like that might be applicable is under some of the land and use, water permitting
One
stuff.
thing I found interesting is
But how about
that,
our code? Our code
like,
enforcement?
Yeah, I would think the code.
Yeah,
have-
if you require.
That's it.
There are some things related to code in these
Yep.
sections.
Well, as you said, you make the argument, you get something.
yeah, so like if
Maybe have full
if
credit, but-
DOT replaces the streetlights with LED fixtures, we
Mhm.
get points for that.
So if the county or the
Traffic
DOT
signals.
do
Mhm.
traffic signal upgrades or anything in town boundaries, we get points for it.
And I already contacted
they
them, they're
certainly
supposed
need
to
them.
let me know.
Which isn't
what
applicable.
Sarah's been all over
Oh.
the state and the DOT.
But yeah, like in my program, the municipality actually has to do it. In the CSC program, there's that caveat where if you're working together with them, it's
Right.
some sort of partnership.
Which was
It's
really
applicable
cool.
to you too.
Same with the county.
Correct.
I think this is obvious, but just so I'm clear, we're not doing this at November, maybe we'll talk about it for a while.
We're gonna talk
Figure it
about
out
it.
before we, we'll
It should-
leave it on the agenda.
And it should, and I think that that's appropriate. Like, I think it should be that way. I would want you guys to make sure that like you said, you don't want something that's hollow.
No.
Whatever you want put in place is gonna be something that's gonna be functional and beneficial for you guys to support.
And, yeah, people wanna work on it, not
Yeah,
just
figure out
me.
staff.
Thanks
Right,
for coming in, Rob.
Good to see you again. Take care.
Very good.
Thank you guys for your time. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you for
Thank you.
Sure.
your time.